Jeffrey Rosen just got named to be the new Attorney General for the last month of Trump's time in office. We learned that William Barr was pushed out or resigned last night. And we learned that his hand-picked deputy, Jeffrey Rosen, will be taking Barr's place and running the Justice Department until Trump is no longer president. Jeffrey Rosen's key role in trying to cover up the scandal and the alleged criminal behavior by the president that led to Trump's impeachment, it's interesting to me. It hasn't had much scrutiny at all since the announcement that he's going to be the new Attorney General. But if he's taking over the Justice Department for just the last month of the Trump administration, it's worth thinking about the kinds of things that Trump might want to do in that last month. It's worth remembering the role that Rosen had in trying to make that alleged criminal behavior by President Trump not only disappear, but disappear in a way that would submarine those allegations and prevent anybody else from looking at them. But look at what else has happened over Jeffrey Rosen's tenure since he and William Barr have been in office. As reporter Charlie Savage puts it today at the New York Times, quote, Mr. Rosen has kept a low profile, but with Attorney General Barr's pending resignation, Rosen is set to become the nation's top law enforcement official for the delicate final month of Mr. Trump's presidency. It will be an extraordinary responsibility for a man who has no prosecutorial experience and who has participated in several decisions in which the department took steps that favored the president's friends or punished his perceived enemies. I would add to that steps that benefited the president directly against serious allegations of criminal behavior. But the litany of things that Rosen's been involved in is amazing. I mean, among other things, it was Jeffrey Rosen who tried to force an indictment of Andrew McCabe, who was the acting FBI director who took over the FBI after Trump fired Comey. McCabe had overseen the important parts of the Russia investigation. President Trump demanded that McCabe be prosecuted and locked up. It was Jeffrey Rosen who tried to insist that McCabe must be indicted, that he must be prosecuted against the views of career prosecutors. It was also Jeffrey Rosen who was put in charge of reviewing the work of career prosecutors who took on the case of Roger Stone. The result of Rosen's review was that DOJ came in and tried to overrule all those prosecutors to insist that Roger Stone get a much lighter sentence. The prosecutors on that case quit in protest after what Jeffrey Rosen did to their case against Stone. It was Jeffrey Rosen who, according to the New York Times, quarterbacked the Justice Department bringing a case against Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton when Bolton set out to write a book critical of President Trump. Trump reportedly demanded that the Justice Department go after Bolton for having the temerity to write a negative book about Trump. It was Jeffrey Rosen that actually led the Justice Department in that effort to, in fact, put the power of the U.S. Justice Department into an effort to go after Bolton. It was also Jeffrey Rosen who decided that Trump Cabinet Secretary Ryan Zinke shouldn't be prosecuted, even after Zinke was referred for criminal prosecution related to a number of scandals. And career prosecutors convened a grand jury in that case. It was Jeffrey Rosen who kiboshed that, and Zinke was never charged over the objections of career prosecutors. It was Jeffrey Rosen, as we heard on last night's show, who intervened with prison officials to make sure that Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort would not have to set a delicate foot inside the jail on Rikers Island, like any other prisoner would have had to do if that prisoner was in federal custody, but also facing criminal charges in New York State court. It was Jeffrey Rosen who intervened to make sure Manafort wouldn't have to go to Rikers. It was Jeffrey Rosen who wrote that letter to federal prosecutors just a few months ago, telling them that they should consider charging anti-racism protesters with sedition. Sedition. The crime of trying to overthrow the U.S. government. That was Jeffrey Rosen who wrote to prosecutors to tell them that that's how they should treat anti-racism protesters. Charge them with trying to overthrow the U.S. government and throw the book at them. That's Jeffrey Rosen's record under William Barr at the Justice Department. And now he's going to be taking over the Justice Department for the last month that Trump's in office, when I'm sure Trump won't insist on doing anything weird at all with the powers of the Justice Department. What could possibly go wrong? So, from the Trump side, the lame duck period is as weird as it's ever been, and unnerving as well, right? That said, one of these things is not like the other. I mean, from the Biden side, the side of the incoming administration, they are conducting a normal transition and rolling stuff out as normal, or at least as normal as things can be done during the pandemic. Today, new President-elect Biden appointments were announced or reported for a bunch of important positions, including Pete Buttigieg, former Democratic presidential candidate, for transportation secretary. If Mr. Buttigieg is confirmed, he will be the first LGBT cabinet secretary in the nation's history. Also, there's reporting tonight that the president-elect is choosing Gina McCarthy to be his domestic coordinator on climate. So John Kerry will be the global climate envoy. Gina McCarthy will work on climate on the domestic side. McCarthy, of course, was EPA administrator in the Obama administration. She knows of what she speaks on this issue. Also reporting tonight that former Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm will be energy secretary in the Biden administration. So from the side of the incoming administration, the president-elect and his team are sort of rolling things forward in an orderly and fairly non-controversial way. The transition appears to be on pace and, again, kind of normal-looking from the side of the incoming administration. But in terms of the outgoing administration, it's definitely still crazy town. I mean, forgive me, it's a technical term, but the president today retweeted this statement that the Republican governor and the Republican secretary of state in the state of Georgia should both prepare to go to jail. You see, the thing he retweeted there has Governor Brian Kemp and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger both wearing face masks that show that they're secret communist Chinese agents. I mean, it's one thing. It's actually a pretty considerable thing for one of the lawyers who the president has used for his post-election legal challenges to say something like this and put this in writing online. But for the president to boost the